So just like villains, your NPCs should have memorable traits and flaws. Chris does a great job of making easily recognizable NPCs by their voice, but it doesn't always have to be the way you roleplay them. It could be something that the players can easily latch onto, like, okay, this is the guy who he's only got one arm, or this is the guy who always dresses super flamboyantly, right? Just a very simple, straightforward, one phrase hook can make it so that when your players encounter that NPC over and over again, it's very easy for them to recall it. And this is something that Chris does really well as well. It's okay to have NPCs in the game that are sort of neutral, right? They neither help nor hinder the party, and some of the most interesting adventures come when the players need to convince those neutral parties to join their side. So don't be afraid of creating NPCs that don't start out either friendly or unfriendly to the players. So continuing with our create your own adventure here, let's come up with a good NPC ally for the players to have. We already know that they're going to be going into this desert that's created by an artifact to find the church where the former hero, now turned villain, is hiding. So, yes, sir. All right, so the suggestion is a local shaman who is trying to clean up the desert and make it verdant once more. Yes, sir.
Maybe a former rival, even friendly rival of our hero turned villain.
Okay.
Who did a lot of trash talking about the old guy, and now he's actually.
All right, so a former rival. I like the idea of the former rival that was sort of a professional rival, right? Like maybe another adventurer who was like, I could have been the hero, but he got all the fame, or something like that. So that's actually pretty interesting. I can actually probably combine those two ideas. I could see a situation where you have the villain and then this NPC. They were once adventurers together, and the villain got all the glory and got all the praise, and this guy kind of got put out to pasture, and so he became a hermit, was living in this area, and then when it got turned into a desert, he was like, okay, great, this guy gets all the fame, and now he also ruined my awesome hermit house. That's fantastic. That's what I want to see, right? Okay, so actually, that sounds like a pretty cool story. And then all we to do at this point is come up with a few either visual or role-playing cues to assign to this shaman. Maybe he's battle scarred because he was once an adventurer. Maybe unlike most hermits, this guy is extremely well dressed because he's got all that adventuring money lying around. Maybe when the party comes to his hut, he's decked out in a bunch of bling. Yes. Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, especially when you think about visual cues like that can give you some clue as to the character's history as well. Always a good thing. Oh, yeah. In Chris's game, one of the NPCs that helped us, he was missing an arm, but he had this weird insectoid prosthetic. Yeah, well, he was an ally for a little while, anyways. But as all allies must do, he eventually went the way of being killed by adventurers.
This particular prosthetic for this character in Chris's campaign was an insectoid arm that was a murder weapon. So he would pull it out. He would carry this little instrument case along. So, he plays an instrument. Oh no, he pulls it out and puts it on and then tries to kill you. That was a very interesting little prosthetic that he had. We're still telling stories about you, Chris.
And if you kill him, it detaches itself, flies off, and attaches to your face.
I wish he was making that up. All right, so I'm going to talk briefly about rewards. Pretty much, we all know that rewards eventually come to the players over the course of the adventure, but I want to talk about briefly about how you pick those rewards. When you're picking your magic items, it's good to pick items that make your heroes feel important. And what I mean by that is that while it's cool to occasionally get the bag of tricks or the bag of holding or something like that, players tend to like players tend to feel like getting rewards that have some sort of story behind them end up making them important to that story, right? So, for example, if the players beat the bad guy and get his sword, and that sword is his symbol of office in his evil church, right? The players feel like, all right, we've beaten this guy and we've gotten this out of him. You know what? It might just be the +4 sword or +4 longsword or whatever, but if you give it a little bit of a story and a little bit of a position in the world, it helps make your players feel like they've actually accomplished something reasonable in addition to getting, the +4 sword that they want. It's okay to create your own treasure that you're going to give out. Basically, create your own magic items. Just make sure it's thematically appropriate to the adventure. For example, in our adventure, we're talking about this guy who used to work for the church. He's a former adventurer, so thematically appropriate stuff would be weapons or armor that he picked up when he was adventuring, maybe holy symbols or relics that the church entrusted him with. Probably less thematically appropriate to give him a book full of wizard spells, unless maybe he stole it from his former wizard buddy or something like that. But just make sure that whenever you're putting something unique that you've created into your adventure, make sure it ties into the story in some way. Otherwise, your players might be a little confused as to why it ended up in there. Be generous with consumable items. This is just sort of general advice. It's excuse me, it's puberty apparently. No, it's really good to throw out potions of healing, elixirs, things like that, because your players, will have an expendable resource, and it's something you don't actually have to worry about sticking around forever. So that's just a little piece of general advice. One thing that I really like is items that only work in the context of the adventure. For example, in Chris's 3rd edition campaign that I played in, we had a place we needed to go to. It was a dwarven necropolis, and the dwarven necropolis had a curse upon it that made it so that the people that entered that necropolis aged really, really quickly and died. And so what we had to do is we had to go find this person who made these potions that actually turned us into undead for a short amount of time in order to get us into the necropolis and get us to walk around in the necropolis. And, of course, that brought with it all sorts of vulnerabilities to positive energy and things like that. So they were these potions that weren't terribly useful outside of the context of the adventure, but within the context of the adventure, it was incredibly useful. And it's also something that's kind of memorable. So when we talk about that adventure now, we're like, hey, you guys remember that time that we all turned into zombies? That was pretty awesome, right? So, things like that also make the setting feel a little bit more believable, because it seems like the kind of thing that you should be able to find in a fantastic setting. When you're dealing with non-combat or non-item rewards, rewards that have high social value or that let them break the rules in some way often feel really, really good and make your players feel like they're becoming someone important in the world. For example, if you give someone a reward that is like, you're now the baron of this plot of land, and you can put out bounties on people's head now. That's a piece of authority that you have. That's not an item, and it might not, it can't really be used in any way that the DM doesn't allow, because, the players can be like, all right, we're going to put a bounty out on the king, and, the DM's like, yeah, that's not going to work, right? I'm sorry, that's not how this hierarchy works.
There's all kinds of things you can play with this. One of the things I did in my campaign as a reward to fuel future adventures was, after they defeated this bad guy who was fairly well installed in this city, they found a black ledger that basically contained the names and deeds of various folks in the city whom she'd been blackmailing. And the characters then have this cool little toy to play with. Do they collect on these various things, or do they use this information to basically lord over these individuals to get something else that they desire?
That's a great example. By the way, this rogue you see here, that's my rogue in Chris's Wednesday night campaign. And just here's a little warning. When you give your party a keep or castle, they're going to want to stay in it and protect it for a while. So if it's early on in the campaign and you don't want them to become too sessile, be afraid or beware giving them the keep too early, because it's cool to have a base of operations, but if you're trying to get your party to go off somewhere, it can be difficult because like, wait, we can't go on this adventure. We got to take care of our keep. It's not going to clean itself. All right, so we're going to talk briefly about repercussions because I think it's one of the things that is actually often glossed over. Basically, the events of the adventure should have long-lasting repercussions on the campaign. These don't have to be severe repercussions, but whenever your players take actions and defeat villains and overcome challenges, if everything returns to the status quo at the end of the adventure, they're going to start questioning, well, why do we even do that, right? I mean, evil is still in power or whatever, right? If you allow your player or allow your adventure to affect the future adventures, the future of the world, your players will get the sense that they're actually participating in something that is making a difference. And, in D&D, your heroes are there to make a difference in the world. And, well, that's exactly what I just said. So keep moving. When you start getting up to Paragon tier especially, but any kind of higher level situation, it's really good and really makes your players feel awesome if you let their reputations precede them. So they go into the town and they're like, "Hi, we're the adventuring company," and they're like, "Yeah, we heard about you. You guys killed that lich." All of a sudden, the players are now important players in the world, right? The PCs are important figures in the world, and it's a little reminder that that adventure that you guys had about a month ago, that adventure just impacted this adventure, right? Because this guy's heard of you now, and now he's more likely to be friendly to you, etc. So definitely use reputations and word of their deeds to work in their favor, and you can use it against them too, but that's only if they're going crazy and doing what adventurers do. When you get to the end of your adventure, the hero's actions should have affected NPCs in some way. So it's okay to alter the relationships positively or negatively with the NPCs that you've created for your campaign. And then just a little simple tip, remind players of their past adventures, whether they succeeded or failed. The reputations thing is a good example of how to do that with both successes and failures, but it's okay, like we've had this happen several times in Chris's campaign where we fail and then it comes back to bite us in the ass later. That's a good example of how you can make your players feel like, okay, I was participating in the story that has moved on as a result of my actions. So I think that's it's kind of important to let your players know that their success or failure is going to impact the outcome of future stories. I think that's about all I've got. Did you guys have anything you want to add? Yeah. All right, we've got like 3 minutes left, which is awesome. Does anybody have any questions? No? All right. Well, guys, thanks for coming. I really appreciate you sitting in. Some great ideas for that adventure. I'll write that stuff up for a blog post. If you check out our Wizards community site, you can find our staff blogs on there as well. So I'll write that up and talk about our little adventure here, so you'll be able to see sort of the outcome of that probably in a couple of weeks when I get back to the office. So thanks a lot for coming, and have a good day at the con.